What's up, Exit the Matrix family? Bob here. Hey guys, I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for joining me on this morning talk. So, we are gonna pick back up here with Is Earth a Soul Trap? This will be part 3. Yesterday, Sunday, I got part 1 uploaded. Had a little bit of issue with that. It took a while. I actually planned on dropping 1 and 2 because I cut part 2 on Saturday, but like I said, I was having issues uploading and I needed my phone for other things. So when I'm uploading, folks, I usually I do it a lot of my stuff directly from my phone, so to not cause issues or anything with YouTube and with cell service and everything else that goes into that, I have to usually set my phone aside for about an hour to an hour and a half to allow it to upload. And then if it doesn't upload properly, it'll re-upload, and sometimes it puts you in a loop. So that's why sometimes I have trouble getting multiple videos in a day uploaded. You got other stuff going on in your life, right? So I usually have a million things going on all the time. And sometimes Sunday's my only day off, though lately I've been working Sundays. So sometimes I really just don't do anything on Sundays, to be honest. So, but anyways, guys, so today I really wanted to kind of go down the near-death experience side of this whole scenario that I guess that we've been building, because there's so much you got to understand about this. Look, it's not like, okay, we'll talk about is Earth a solar reincarnation trap, and just you can't do it in 30 minutes. There's a lot of things you got to look at, and so I've been building a lot of the background on all this. We went all the way back to the construct, the hybridization of man, going back to the ancient cuneiform tablets, the Genesis story and all that. We started building the framework there. And then we've been getting ready to get into the NDE side of all this. And then probably tomorrow I'll do a video on how the Gnostic scriptures, the Nag Hammadi scriptures, how all that ties into this. Because look, folks, there's a lot of ancient mysticism, religion, mythology that all ties into this too. So it's not just such a simple forward thing here. And look, we haven't even touched on the quantum physics yet. So there's a lot of things that is going to play into this. But a quick recap was that we've come to the understanding, right, that the ancients understood that we are not physical beings. They understood that we are conscious energy, or what they called spirits, and that these spirits are having a human experience through the human avatar body. And I made it quite clear that the Anunnaki, the Anuna, the Elohim, whatever you want to call them, the Watchers and such, that they are physical beings too. Okay? So, I know that this Christians really get caught up in this, right? Because they think the angels are all like spirits or something. They don't. Yet here they are supposedly sleeping with females, right? So we went over that too, trying to make that understood, because you need to know all this stuff to really look at this whole thing critically. So anyways, guys, like I've been telling you guys, you need to look into the NDEs too, because look, a lot of this information that is being brought back to us is being brought back by people that have been flatlined, gone, their body, and they were able to leave their body in the spirit form, or you could call it the conscious energy form, and they have experiences outside of the body, and they're always varied, and a lot of times they manifest some of that that welcoming to the other side, through programming that they got on earth. Like, I know Christians, they have this like really big hard on for like hell, even though hell's technically not even in the Bible, but they'll point to NDEs and be like, well, look, NDEs also talk about a hell experience. And I've made the point many times, if you actually listen to these people that have had these hell experiences, they'll even flat out tell you later on in their talks that they understood that they created that hellscape because they were programmed when they were on earth. They were typically Catholics, that they believed in purgatory and all this stuff, that they were, going to go there when they passed. And so that very few would actually go to heaven. And so they experienced this hellscape when they left earth. And it's because they manifested it. And they come to that realization later on, but see, Christians always cut it off before they explain all that, because they don't want to hear the rest of the story that, look, we have pure manifestation powers on the other side. Because they don't want you to understand that you're an immortal spirit. They want you to, to believe that this God is a tyrant, taskmaster, judging God. They don't want you to believe that the source, the light of all creation, is pure love. It's the highest form of vibration. And there is no judgment with this source, with our Creator, okay? With this grand mind, this grand consciousness that we are all fractals of. And that they don't want you to understand that when you're out of the body, when you leave Earth, when you leave this dimension, you leave your body behind, you leave all of the corruption, all of the sins, all of the desires, the animalistic desires of the flesh behind. And when you're back in spirit, there is no blemish or blame. Because, look, you were just having an experience in a simulated realm, okay? But the problem is with this realm, folks, and we'll get into this tomorrow with the Gnostic teachings, is that this realm is managed by beings that feed off of our source energy that we bring into this realm when we incarnate in the human body. And they have decided to separate themselves from the light, from the source. Now, you can never truly separate from the source, but as far as they could, they've cut themselves off. Okay? And when you come to Earth, you're in their realm now. And that's why they're the ones that build the dualism, the darkness, the aspect that you don't find in the higher dimensions. See, folks, that's why there's no blame or judgment in the higher dimensions, because when you're in your pure spirit, you have no need to sin. There is no desires of the flesh. That all happens on earth, folks, not in heaven, okay? So the NDE accounts, folks. So now there's some things, though, that I got to admit that may raise my eyebrows that people talk about when they have these NDE experiences. One of the major red flags for me, folks, is when they're always asked, right, that when they're on the other side, it's either a family member that's guiding them, it's like their higher self, like a spirit guide, an angel, or Yeshua himself, or some other kind of religious, archetype figure. And a lot of times they'll tell them, hey, look, so your body's ravaged, however, your family's it's gonna hit them hard, and you have a child still, you have a choice, though. Do you want to go back? Or you can stay here. It's up to you. There's no judgment, and it's your choice. And what I always find peculiar about this is that they're always told that, but how many of these ones I've listened to where they say they don't want to go back? Like 90% of the time, the people say they don't want to go back to Earth. Because once they're out of the body and they're in that pure light and love, they're free of pain, of sorrow, of fear, right? And they don't want to go back. And then they realize now that even their children are immortal spirits, their husbands, their grandparents, their brothers and sisters. So they're not as afraid anymore of leaving Earth, because they know everybody's actually okay, that this is all an illusion. And so they're like, well, screw it. Why do I want to go back? They'll be okay. No matter how hard it is on earth, once they're out of the body, they'll realize it was just an experience, right? But then it's peculiar that a lot of times these people get forced back against their will, even though they're told it's their choice. They'll say, well, you got to fulfill your contract, your sole contractor. You need to go back for this or that, unfinished business, And a lot of times people will say they just get pushed back without, even after they're told they have a choice. It's like you have a choice, and then you're like, well, I don't really want to go back. And then, boom, they get the boot out of heaven, and they go back to earth, and they're back in their body. And now there are some people that have NDEs that do choose to come back. That they don't, they want to finish out their life with their spouse. They want to go back to raise. Maybe they were a widow and they are already like a single parent raising their child, and they don't want their child to grow up without a parent. And look, I get that, folks. Imagine the power of love when you're willing to come back here to this shithole named Earth, and you have the choice not to, and you're in that pure understanding and that pure love and light, and you still choose to come back into this hellscape to to raise a child, so that they don't have to go without a parent. I mean, that is some amazing level of love, right? So this causes a quandary, though, folks, right? I mean, they're told they have a choice, but yet many times they get just forced back anyways. And there have been some where they aren't given a choice, where they're forced. They're like, look, you can't be here. You're not supposed to be here. You're going to go back. And then they get the boot back, and they're kicked back out of the higher dimensions back into Earth, right? Back into the body that's broken, usually from a car accident or a medical, issue. And look, folks, if you have not studied NDEs and OBEs, people that, like Darius J. Wright is somebody I like to follow his work. He's somebody that's been doing OBEs, out of bodies, where he can actually controlled out of bodies since he was like 15 years old. And he's been mapping the other side. And of course, there were other people that were doing this too. Some of the people that were involved with the earliest, like the psychic groups that were working for the government, right? Like that, the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. That's based off of the psychic warriors that the Pentagon had. Well, some of those guys and some of their friends that weren't in the military were working on, ways to do controlled out of bodies, and they were working on techniques to do that, right? And so a lot of these guys were mapping the other side outside of the body. So there is a lot to look at, folks, with the out of body like stuff. And yes, it's stuff that it's hard because you got to take these people's word because it's their experiences, right? But a lot of these NDEs have been medically documented that there is no way that they could have lied about these experiences. Like when they see doctors talking in other rooms and they tell the doctors what they were talking about, wearing, when they were supposed to be in a medical coma, where they were flatlined, and yet they were out of the body watching everything happen. And folks, I have a family member that had this type of experience. My aunt, when she was in college, was roofied at a bar, and they must have put too much in her drink. She had to get rushed to the hospital by her friends, and they had to pump her stomach. Well, she flatlined, and she left her body while the doctors were working on her. And I remember her telling me back this when I was like in my early 20s, saying how she was floating over her body, watching the doctors work on her body. Okay, folks? So those of you that are materialists, atheists, whatever, that you're like, you don't believe in anything that can't be measured, or or with the using the the materialistic means of deduction, and experimentation and documentation and such. Well, you can't, folks, because look, this stuff is not just completely tied in with this realm. These experiences leave this dimension. They are spread out over multiple dimensions. So your materialistic ways of trying to prove these things, that you can't do it. So we have to rely on these people's experiences and their accounts. But however, a lot of them can be documented and backed up with like I said, people going back to the doctors and being able to explain things that there's no way that they could have explained, and know things that there's no way they could have known. And some of these people, there was one case where this guy had been dead for so long, rigor mortis had already set in completely. And he was literally in a body bag, like in the morgue. And I mean, there's instances like that, folks, that people have gone that far. There's been people that their brains have been essentially mush, brain dead from being dead so long, but yet miraculously their brain heals. Because a lot of times when you choose to go back, or they force you to come back, they'll heal your body from a higher dimension. There's been miraculous healings that the doctors can't they have no explanation for. But the one thing that's always itching at the back of my mind is this whole you have a choice to come back or not thing. And I think this is where the people that really, believe a lot that this is a type of reincarnation trap or a soul trap, they believe that that's all just a trick being set up when you leave the body, that they use people that right, like family members that have passed, and even pets, right? Or religious figures like Yeshua, maybe Krishna if you're a Hindu, or that they use these figures to trick you to go back and back to Earth. And sometimes and maybe it's not even just being sent back during an NDE, but it's after you've completely crossed. And then instead of being able to stay in this higher realm, and that you get tricked to come back to Earth and go essentially like the reverse of like the going to the light, right? Well, they send you down another tunnel going back to the light, but this time the light that you pop out of is your mother. Without going into a graphic description, if you get my meaning, right? It's almost the reverse of people when they, like, it's typical, folks, when people have an NDE, when they leave their body, first they are floating above the body, but eventually they notice that there's a shift that happens, or else they notice a different place, and they kind of turn from that scene. And a lot of times they have that typical experience of the void, but a lot of people call it the great womb, the womb of the earth, like this void that surrounds the earth construct. But some people say it's scary, and I think some people get the idea of this void as like separation from God, like they find it scary, like it's this abyss, right? The bottomless pit you find in in the Bible, right? But then other people say no, it's a comforting darkness. It's like you're in your mother's womb and you feel protected, and it's like a velvety blackness. So when people have that near-death experience, it's like they go back into the womb, right? It's like the reverse of how you come onto Earth. And then they say when you're in the darkness, eventually you see a light or a tunnel or some sort. And when you go to that light, that's when you end up in like a room with these spirit guides or family members like welcoming you back, or Jesus, Yeshua, or whatever, and or spirit guides. And a lot of times that's where people have their life review. Now, this isn't God sitting on a throne, a God with a white beard and the book of life in one hand and the angels all around him and people at his, all worshiping him, saying holy, 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 and he's about ready to judge your ass, right? No. Typically, it's that you just get a review of your experience on Earth. And you get it from a 360-degree view where you experience good and bad, how you treated people, you experience good and bad, what your choice is, like outcomes that happen because of that. You also experience from their emotional view, from their like viewpoint. So it's this really intense, like very immersed experience. But there's no God judging you there that he's going to send you to hell or anything. And I know Christians have a big problem with this because, my God, they punch their cards into heaven and they don't want anybody else in heaven. If you don't believe in their system and their religion and their God, and you didn't get your ticket punched in, while you're sitting on your on Sundays on that church pew listening to Pastor Dan every weekend and tithing your money and donating your money to the church, well, if you didn't do all that, you don't deserve a place in heaven, according to these people. You deserve to burn in hell for eternity. I mean, such loving people. Now, I can't tell you how many of these people laugh at me and say, oh, I can't wait till you're burning in hell and all this stuff. Like, they're total clowns, folks. I mean, just total clowns. And I talk about this stuff, and what's their always go-to? Oh, that's demonic. The fallen angels were tricking you, and, tricking these NDE people, and all this on and on and on. But, folks, sometimes you gotta wonder, though, is it possible that we're all being tricked? That Earth is some kind of energy farm, and that they farm our source energy from God, that we are given from God, and they use that for their own sustenance because they've been away from the source for so long that they need that sustenance somehow. And so they farm it off of us, and they created this reincarnation soul trap that leads you back into Earth so that they can continue to farm you while you're here. And the energy they farm you, they get it off of sexual energy, they get it off of emotional energy. That's why they love like sporting events and all this stuff, because there's a lot of emotion in that. People get all worked up over their football team, and there's all these different ways that when you're on Earth, like that they can feed off your emotions, off your energy. And that's what we're going to go into tomorrow. Now we're going to take this to the next step, because the Gnostics actually talk about this. Yeah, the same Gnostics, the mystics that were that were more likely the Essenes, that you hear about, and some of these other mystic orders. And eventually they some of them fled into France. They were the Cathars, and these people were early mystic Christians and mystic Jews, and they were teaching things that the Roman church did not want to be taught. And, well, one of the main things they were teaching is that this world is ruled by this demiurge who is Yahweh, who is the liar God, the jealous God that claims that he is the only God, but he's a fake, he's a liar, and he's entrapped souls in his construct called Earth, and that his archons, his angels, his demons, he controls angels and demons in this realm, that they feed off of our energy. And so that's where we're going to go tomorrow, folks. And there's a reason why they had to wipe out the Gnostics and the Cathars and the Essenes, because these mystics were teaching these secret mystery school teachings about this place. And so when you do read the Nag Hammadi, boy, trust me, it's easy to start believing in this, that Earth is a type of reincarnation or soul trap, right? And we didn't even get into karma, folks. I have major issues with the whole karma argument, okay? And I don't have time to get into that. Maybe we'll talk about the karma thing tomorrow too. But look, folks, do research into the NDEs, okay? I tie the NDEs in with the ancient teachings, with quantum physics, with the Gnostic teachings, with the biblical stuff, all this stuff. I try to connect all the dots. And if you haven't been following these NDEs or anything, I mean, my God, where have you been? I mean, these people, they'll go to church every weekend, but they won't, research a handful of NDEs or anything. And I have noticed that there's this big movement by Christian NDE channels that are popping up, and they're losing the argument or the narrative on NDEs. So they're trying to take over, and they're always constantly pushing the hell experiences and all. I follow some of them because I like to hear the propaganda, and they're clowns. They really are clowns, folks. I mean, anything to push their religion. They're all paid actors. I mean, it's just such a joke. You know, I always get Christians throwing the whole Wes Huff thing at me, like, yeah, you must be one of those Billy Carson acolytes, and Wes Huff destroyed him. Wes Huff didn't destroy nothing. Wes Huff is a paid actor, folks. Wes Huff has been destroyed by other people that prove that his stuff's bullshit. And look, Wes Huff is arguing over, his whole premise is arguing over 300, 400 AD texts, proving the Bible. The dude never talks about cuneiform or anything because he knows goddamn well that the Bible's not that old, okay? Even the Hebrew is not that old. That the cuneiform is thousands of years older, and those contain the original stories. They were remixed by the Judeans and the church, and they added in Zoroastrianism and Platonism and Mithraism, Sol Invictus worships, right? Sun worship, astrotheology. All this has been remixed into your Bible, folks. It is the word of man. It is not the word of God. I will stand true to that to the end of my life. And okay, and if I'm wrong, okay, I guess you guys will get what you want. I'll burn in hell forever. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen, folks, because I'm pretty sure that God created me with my own unique viewpoint and my own unique thoughts. And he knew from my creation, right, that what I would be about and what I would be working on. And for obviously, that was preordained. So why would he wipe out a soul that he already knew from the beginning what they were going to do? Good and bad, right? See, we're data collectors, folks, for this grand, mind. We are fractals of that mind experiencing its own creation. I know this is way too much for most Christians to even wrap their minds around because they want to believe in this man-like God sitting on a throne. They don't want to believe in a grand consciousness that encapsulates all of creation, and that you are an immortal fractal of that mind, which means you are a child of that God. You are an immortal spirit yourself and a creator. Okay? And that maybe all this is just some grand classroom that we're being sent to learn so that someday we are moving up our own levels of evolution, spiritually speaking, so that we will be managing worlds someday. That's actually kind of what I think this is all about, really. But that's for another day and another time. So anyways, guys, I hope you're enjoying this. And I know some of you are probably like, just get to it already. Well, look, you got to build the big picture. Any of you that have been following my videos, you guys understand this, right? You can't answer something like that simple. There's a lot involved in it, a lot of working parts. So anyways, guys, hey, hopefully today I can get part 2 uploaded, and I may be like a day behind my uploads, but if I can get home today and have enough time to get 2 videos, I'll try to get 2 and 3 uploaded. But it might be just one each day, and I might just be kind of cutting a video and then a day or 2 behind on uploading it, but it is what it is. So, but hey guys, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you later.